what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Behind the Reel podcast. This is episode number 50, and we are joined tonight by Mr. Cole Spriggs. We're going to be talking about the Kansas Kayak Anglers, how he's been able to do so far this season. We are 4 or 5 tournaments in. He's got a win under his belt. He's got some top finishes. So we're going to definitely highlight Melvern Lake today. That is one that he did walk away with the win on that one. He came away first place, big bass, and his team won the team series as well. So he definitely did his thing on Melvern. We're going to bring him on here in just a few minutes. Guys, if you want to jump in, ask questions along the way, make sure that you're putting those over there in the live comment feed over there on the side of the screen. And if you haven't done so, or if this is your first time joining us, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. This is where we're going to do things like this. We're going to have people on, talk about tournament wins here locally. But we will bring on people outside of the state as well every now and then. And we might talk swim baits, kayak fishing. We might bring a guide on. We do all kinds of cool stuff. So make sure you hit subscribe. And let me see here. And then once some guys start showing up over there in the comments, I want you to tell me if you can hear me okay. I'm out in the garage here, and I've got some AC units going, and I made some adjustments on my mic, so just want to make sure that you guys are able to hear me okay. But we're going to go ahead and bring Cole on here in just a minute. Couple things that you guys might want to be aware of coming up for the Kansas Kayak Anglers. Our next event is going to be out at Wilson Lake, and that is turned into one of my favorite lakes in the state over the years. It's definitely been tough at times, and but we have saw some really big stringers come out of there. We've seen the All-American Series come out, and those guys are coming from all over the Midwest, and saw some really good numbers put up there. So that lake is definitely showing out these last several years, and we're going to be there here in just a couple weeks. I was trying to get my schedule pulled up here. So that one is going to be July 9th. So far we've had the Mineland Wildlife Area, we've had Perry Lake, we've had El Dorado, we've had Melvern, and this last one was at Big Hill. So after that, we have Wilson, we have Timber Creek, and then we have Hillsdale. So last event of the season is going to be September 10th. Make sure you guys are making these last 3. If you're wanting to make a run at AOY, that is something that we're going to be calculating here soon, just to kind of give everybody a feel for where they're at. Definitely going to need to bring your A game. We've got lots of anglers showing up to these events. Big Hill here, I'm looking at the results from Big Hill. We had 37 anglers at that one. The most this year we've had was 63. So some of the best kayak anglers in the state are coming out to compete at these events. So definitely make sure you show up to Wilson. That is going to be a fun one. Danny says I sound loud and clear. So what we're going to do, we've got a few people on here live. We're going to go ahead and bring Cole on. We're going to meet him, kind of get a feel for who he is, maybe off of the water. We all know who he is on the water for sure. He's definitely made himself known over the last several years. And he's done his thing with NECA, and now he is doing it with KKA. So, all right, guys, we're going to bring him on. Post those questions. What's up, Cole?
How's it going, John?
Pretty good. How are you doing tonight?
Hanging in there. So halfway through the week, can't complain.
That's right. Hump day.
That's right.
Get you through it. This podcast here, if that may be all you need, just to get you through the rest of the week.
That's right. Well, no, I'm looking forward to chatting with you and answering any questions that you have. But I'll start out by saying, John, I appreciate all the hard work that you guys are putting in as tournament directors into this series, and I think it's a good thing how we've come together as different clubs and started exploring some new lakes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think things will get better. It hasn't been perfect. It hasn't been the smoothest thing in the world, but I think it's gone fairly well. So we'll grow. I don't see I don't see this thing going anywhere anytime soon. It just makes sense for us all to compete together and fish all the best lakes in the state. I think that's what we're doing, and we might switch things up a little bit as far as venues and whatnot. But yeah, no, I think it's yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it'll get better too. So for all of you guys that maybe have some complaints or maybe have some critiques, like we're all ears. We know there's room for improvement. So first off, just in case this might be someone's first time meeting you, if you want to just kind of briefly introduce yourself and tell us how you got into fishing, and then maybe more particularly kayak fishing.
Yeah. So Cole Spriggs, I grew up in the Kansas City area, made my way to school down in Arkansas, so got to learn some great waters there and explore some different techniques of fly fishing and the different things that that state has to offer. But once I got out of school and made my way back to Kansas City, I reside on the west side of Kansas City in western Shawnee, DeSoto area. So I've always, back in the day, I kind of split the territory for Flint Hills and NECA,
Yeah.
and was able to kind of jump between those two clubs. But I've been kayak fishing for, gosh, I'd say the last 7 years. And I got my start down in Arkansas. There's a lot of beautiful rivers there. Loved fishing for smallmouth and trout. So I picked up my kind of, like most folks, the Walmart kayak that I found at a garage sale and car top that around. And being a bigger guy, I knew it was time to upgrade. So once I started getting into it, it became an addiction, like it is for most of us. So I got two kiddos, a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. So they keep me pretty busy, and a wife who somehow supports this crazy obsession as well, or allows me to go out and do it. Uh, but yeah, so that's a little bit about me in a nutshell. Is there any gaps, John, that I can help fill in?
What do you do for a living?
Yeah, so I have very soft hands. I'm a banker.
Okay.
I work on the marketing and sales side for a larger Midwestern bank on the commercial side. So not
Okay.
retail, but commercial.
Okay. Cool. All right. Yeah, that's been a question we sometimes forget, and it's been a common one that people will ask. Um, so how long have you been competing in these like NECA or Flint Hills? How long?
I want to say about 5 years.
Yeah.
It started pretty quickly once I got into Kansas City. At the time, there was a couple of different trails that I would jump in and out of, and it was a learning curve. And that's one of the things I tell a lot of new folks is, hey, set your goals for yourself, not where you place. Sometimes you don't control all the other things, but set those goals for what you control. And those first few years, I was just pleased to get a limit. I mean, I still am. Depends on the lake, right? But
Yeah.
it's it was certainly it took me a few years to kind of get the groove of these things, but what kept me around for the last 5 years, I think, is a community. It's an awesome group of people. Everyone's very friendly and welcoming. So I certainly encourage anybody that maybe is a new listener for you or new to the kayak game to keep connecting, stick it out. It gets easier. You get to know more people.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. No, I think we have a good group of guys, and it seems like everybody's willing to help each other out. Whether that be making small talk at the awards, saying maybe giving away secrets they shouldn't be, or maybe just seeing somebody that needs help loading up. I mean, whatever it may be. So, yeah, I think that there are people that, maybe have it in their head that they want to come out and do something like this, but the word tournament kind of turns them off and makes them think like, I'm not really ready for that. Um, if you're fishing out of a kayak, I think this is something that could benefit you, especially if you're halfway competitive, or maybe you just want to come out and meet some new people and get a chance at winning a prize or put your name in the hat for big bass. You never know when you might hook into that big bass. Um, Something too that I did want to touch on was, do you have? I think you have like an AOI win with NECA. Is that right?
Yeah, I think I got
So,
that 2 years in a row, which is lucky. So,
which is lucky.
um,
I don't think that's lucky. I don't think that's
well,
lucky, Cole.
find the right fish at the right time. But yeah, so 2 years in a row, and it was you know, definitely competitive though. I think nothing was decided until that final tournament on either of those years.
Okay. Okay. And yeah, I mean we've definitely had some steep competition and um, what at that time the last couple of years, NECA, were they bringing in like 20, 30 guys, or what kind of was attendance looking like there?
Yeah, I think it was I would say between 20 and 40. Those bigger tournaments were when we would kind of group up with some of the other clubs. There would be a lake that kind of sat on the border and we'd do a
Yeah.
combo event. That was last year, and I think that maybe gave way for you guys to start to group up even more once you started seeing that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been something that we have talked about doing and tried doing in different ways, and just decided, if we're gonna have these little mini events where AOI counts for all four clubs, or whatever we've done in the past, it almost just makes more sense to run it as one club. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I'm kind of excited to see what those clubs are going to do. I know Seca's seems to be. I think Flint Hills maybe has done some league night stuff since then. Seca's got a full schedule, and I haven't really done anything with Air Capital, but hopefully we'll be able to use these existing clubs as ways to introduce people to the bigger, KKA. Get people into kayak fishing at the local level, and then have them compete at that higher level with KKA is kind of what I think the goal is. But
And
um,
I could see that, John, too, being too by the body of water. You had made a comment earlier, and once you get to 60 guys at a tournament, those fun lakes that we all know of, those smaller impoundments that we enjoy fishing, are a
yeah,
little more difficult when you cram that many folks on them. So I think a lot of this too is going to separate, more reservoir oriented versus smaller
yeah,
lakes, and that can be an easy kind of defining line for a lot of these events.
for sure. Yeah, and some of those smaller lakes, we don't want to give up fishing either. So
Yeah.
that we've had some really good days on some really small bodies of water. So, but yeah, some of those lakes you get 20 guys on, and that's about all you really want. All right, let's
Absolutely.
see. Casual Bass Guys over here. He says, after we got off the water at Melbourne, I asked Cole how did how he did, and he casually says decent, and dude had the winning bag. He's pretty modest. He said he was lucky to win AOI 2 years in a row. He's a pretty modest dude. What what was it about Melbourne? Um, maybe even take us like leading up to the event. Is that like a lake that you fish a lot? Did you do a lot of homework on it? What did your pre-fishing and that sort of stuff look like
Yeah. I
going into
mean,
the event?
I love Melvern and I love smallmouth, but the last time I was on Melvern, pretty much every time was for a tournament.
Okay.
So probably every year, once a year. It's just a little out of my travel range to go out and do an evening or jump into a morning fish on. So it's really reserved for that. But I think that's a special lake, and it's a lake that you can go out and put up 70 inches, hit the same bank the next day and put up 90 inches. It's a very finicky lake. However, one of the things going into that, I'll tell you, I had three plans that I had made. So knowing that I was going to, check this lake out, I do what most people do, right? You check the weather, you get into it, and you say, all right, what am I going to do? Well, time of year, and I'll put these in my priority order here. My first priority was to try to head to the back of a cove. I thought a lot of these bass will still be guarding fry. That's typically the time of year you hear a lot of anglers saying, oh, they're blowing up on top water, they're eating my buzz bait. And I'm a big believer that that's a lot of fry guarding that the females have when they're holding to the back of coves. My second option was that I was going to go hit, the riprap, and my third was to go deep. The one thing that really changed everything for me is when I pulled up, and it's something I suggest anyone fishing a Corps of Engineers lake does. If you go to their website, you can pull up their discharge and inflow rates. And I noticed that not only did we get a lot of rain that week prior, but that lake had gone up about 7 to 8 feet. At the same time, the day of the tournament, something bad was going to happen that we all don't like, and that's that they were releasing those gates. And what happens when they do that is you'll see that on their charts, you'll see this projection of anywhere between 100 to 1,000 cubic feet a second coming out of the lake. And so when I saw that, my plan A and my plan B went out the window. I knew that fish, what happens when water starts to drop is they start to tuck back. And one of the things that I found on reservoirs, particularly with smallmouth, anytime they feel pressure of that water dropping, they get out of the shallows pretty fast. And I know that they hug the existing shoreline. So that kind of made up my decision. I casted aside a few of the launch locations that I had planned on going to, and I focused in on rock bank that was, and I left my lure right in about that 7 foot of water mark, and that's where every fish I caught was.
7 feet.
So, and it was the morning started out with the Melvern typical 13-inch bass. I think I had 3 or 4 of them at that point. But it all changed about 45 minutes into the tournament when I checked up to an overhanging branch, and my big bass, took my bait at that time, and I was a little bit shell shocked when I, put over a 20-inch smallmouth on the board, and that gave me a little more gusto, I think, for the rest of the tournament.
Yeah. So for those of you watching, one day we'll have people just listening to this thing if I ever make it just a podcast. But for now, if you're enjoying this show, you are watching it. And here you go. You got a 20 and a half?
Yep.
20 and a half inch smallie.
And that was win or lose, John. That's a special fish to me. I'm a little bit of a nerd on the ecology of fishing, and for a smallmouth to get to that size in the Midwest, takes at least 9 years to do that. And that's kind of a humbling experience when you get into that to that age range. Is how I look at it, and I really respect fisheries that can produce smallmouth in the Midwest to that size. So it's for anyone interested that they see an 18-inch bass, it's typically 8 years to get them to that size. So it has to have the right conditions, has to have enough pressure off of that reservoir, or allowing them to not die off or get cold in bigger boat tournaments. But that made it all worth it right there for me.
Oh, absolutely. And that was big bass.
Mm-hmm.
Smallmouth. Heck yeah. Is that your biggest smallmouth today?
It is not. I think in Kansas I have a 21, and I think my largest weight was a little over 6.5 pounds further north. So, I don't know about you, John, but smallies are by far my favorite fish to catch. They fight a little differently, but they're few and far between at times.
Yeah, no, I like catching them. I don't probably catch them near as much as you do. I guess I've caught some smallies on Melvern, but I want to say most, if not all, of my smallmouth, other than that, have come out of El Dorado. So just don't typically fish for them a lot. But my biggest is only like 18. It might be I think it's under 18 and a half, something like that. So that's my biggest. Smallmouth. So yeah, 20 and a half. That's just crazy.
And I bet it fought like a 5-pound bass too. So it doesn't take much
Yeah.
length to get that fight out of them.
I thought it was a drum actually, and I was trying to shake it off.
Yeah.
I
Well, haven't you
actually,
been there before the heartbreak of a drum when you're in a smallmouth lake?
yeah,
So
Melvern. Yeah,
yeah.
it was at Melvern, and it was longer than that board you got right there. In fact, it was. A hog trough, and that thing was over 30 inches long. It was a
Yeah,
monster
those will
drum.
break your heart, especially if they do what they shouldn't do and make a little run on you. So
Yeah, that was at Melbourne. I was catching all kinds of drum there one year. Did you catch any drum this time?
I did. It was I think there was 10 minutes left in the tournament, and um, I have to be honest. I hadn't added up my total in my head on where I was at. I was just fishing, and I kept telling myself if I could get one more Cole, I'd be in it.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that I had it at that time, but I
sure.
had that just 10 minutes left, that magical bite that I thought was it, and sure enough, it was probably a 20-inch drum.
And you were trying to cull a 16. I'm looking at your
Yeah,
standings here. So you thought you needed another one over 16.
yeah. I was concerned that someone would be chasing largemouth, and
Yeah,
it's hard to get a smallie stringer to compete with a largemouth stringer just because they tend to be another inch or so longer.
yeah. I'm going down the list here, and you got me wondering were the largemouth guys in contention, or were they all doing the same thing? It looks
I
like
feel like they shut off even worse than the smallmouth did
okay.
with those gates being open.
Yeah, it looks like Tim. At least his top three right there were all smallies. There's a largemouth.
There you go.
Clayton, let's see what he was doing. Smallmouth, 19-incher. Some healthy smallies in there, man.
Yeah, especially for post spawn.
17. I mean, look at all these 17s, 18s, and they're all smallmouth. That's a big old bottom lip looking
Hmm.
bubble gum.
Dark one.
Yeah, so it looks like the guys right behind you were all catching smallies too. 18 and a half, 18. Scott Reese, he's another one. He's not playing around. He took second out at Big Hill.
Hmm.
An Air Capital guy. That's something too. I really would like to see at the end of the year. Which we need to come up with some sort of formula. Like top 3 anglers from each club represents the club that they came from to see who's I don't know, something fun like that.
I like it.
Air Capital, we got some work to do, that's for sure. But Scott Reese, he's putting in some work for us, that's for sure. So who do you represent in that scenario? Is it NECA?
It'd have to be NECA.
Okay.
I think that's where I got my start, and that's the trail that has been the closest to home for me that I've followed for the last several years.
Okay, because I know you said you were kind of in between, so I didn't know
Yep.
if there was a Flint Hills might try to claim you too. I mean, I would if I was them anyway. So yeah, we've got. I think what we had like 63 at the first one. We've had so we've got what 30? What do we have? 37 at the last one. We had 42 out at Melvern. Those payouts are looking pretty good. I saw you cashed out pretty good with. You had the first place, you had the team, and you had the big bass. I'm sure you walked away with over $1,000 and didn't travel but maybe an hour or two.
Yeah. So what's the joke I heard? It's barely paid for my gas, but
Yeah.
it was obviously it worked out. So
Yeah, the gas is definitely a thing. I wonder if that's keeping people from competing this year, or if maybe people are just coming up with more. I don't know. Maybe people are carpooling this year or sleeping in their tents or whatever. But it doesn't seem like our attendance has suffered a whole lot. I mean, it's really hard to tell being our first year, but I'd say we've been having a pretty good turnout.
well, I think I'll speak for most anglers that it'd take a hell of a recession to keep me off the water,
Yeah.
and I think we all feel that way. that's our Starbucks. That's our outlet. So
Yeah.
it, hopefully it doesn't get much worse. But yeah, we're certainly, you know, I'll make the drive. If not, I'd probably be making it anyways on a Saturday morning somewhere else.
Yeah, for sure. What are your goals for the inaugural season of the Kansas Kayak Anglers? Have you really thought about it? Have you tried to tally up your AOY points on your own, maybe in your free time? Or
I have not. I will say that one of the things that I love to do is explore. I encourage everyone that's, especially kayak fishermen, we have the ability to hit water that other boats can't get on, and so I told myself this year it's really easy for me to stick to home, but just like last weekend going to Big Hill for the first time. I've never been to Wilson, obviously never been to Timber Creek or any of those others that are kind of remaining on the list. I'm just using that as an excuse to get out and learn new water. And circling back, John, to your statement earlier, I will say that if someone new to especially kayak fishing in general, what you can learn in 1 year of following a tournament trail will probably give you 5 years worth of knowledge, and really speed up the process.
yeah, yeah, I would say that's definitely something to look for. Yeah, I mean, somebody who might want to just come out and have fun or meet some new friends, but yeah, there's definitely a lot of learning that go. I mean, you kind of learn by getting beat. I mean, it just is what it is. But at the end of the day, we kind of talk about what we did, and you might be beating yourself over the head at the end of the day because you put that bait down or got off of that pattern or whatever, and come to find out it wins the tournament, or maybe it's like you learn something at every event, whether that's how to throw a bait or where to throw a bait or whatever. I mean, it seems like at the end of the day, if you don't come away with something, then I guess you're doing it wrong. But yeah, definitely a lot to learn from tournament fishing. What are some of the things that you have learned?
It's I think for me, I've learned to slow down a lot. And I know that
Yeah.
there's power fishermen out there, folks that cover a lot more water than I do, but I have found that if I can find fish, there's typically more of those fish that exist. So, give you an example of that. I caught that 20, which was great. Spun the wheel and got lucky on that one. However, I came back to that exact same spot, and that's where I caught that 18 and a half or 18.75.
Mm.
Especially smallmouth. They're schooling fish very similar to crappie, and so they'll travel in packs or wolf packs. And one thing that really differs that I found between smallmouth and largemouth is that smallmouth tend to move up and down in their feeding pattern. Largemouth tend to kind of exist and ambush their prey, where smallmouth will kind of move up in a pack, feed, and move back. So don't be afraid to hit the same thing multiple times. You'll get different results.
Yeah. I would say that that's something that I'm just circling back around to. Like when I first started, that was kind of what I did, just because I was new and I was honestly a new fisherman. But as I've gone through the last 5, 6 years or whatever, I've gotten in this power fishing mode, and it's great when you can find them, but you can waste a lot of time too. And so, you waste a lot of time looking for something and you never really look what you're finding for. Yeah, if I would have just slowed down in some of those same areas and really picked it apart, I probably would have caught fish. So that was actually kind of something that I took away from Big Hill. This last event was to just slow down and kind of milk an area. If you can get a bite in an area, stick to that area, and it was able to catch me a limit. I didn't win anything, but um, that was a big one for me, though. Turning in a limit at Big Hill, it's kicked my butt for the last 5, 6 years or whatever. I've never turned in a limit at Big Hill. I've gotten skunked at Big Hill probably more often than not. So that was a big one for me.
Absolutely. So, John, would you characterize yourself as a power fisherman?
I would. I really would. But I also like to fish jigs, which isn't really a power technique. So, but that's kind of what I would call my finesse, like a jig or a Texas rig. So I will slow down on that sort of stuff, but otherwise I like throwing a crankbait, spinner bait, chatter baits. I mean, I just like throwing moving baits for the most part, but I do like flipping. That's a kind of a power thing. It can be a power thing.
So, John, what would you say is your biggest fishing weakness that you're trying to work on right now, from a technique standpoint, that you believe if you mastered it would put more fish in the boat?
Man, I don't know. Probably, if we're talking about a technique, probably a finesse. Just I can't fish a Ned rig to save my life. If I like to fish a wacky rig, but I have to have something to throw at.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think a Ned rig just I can't. I don't have any visual to keep me focused on not reeling that bait back in. Like if I know I'm throwing at a stump, or if I know there's a bunch of grass there, or whatever I'm throwing that bait around, I can kind of, But if a Ned rig, I just can't even do it. I haven't thrown a Ned rig in 7 years.
It's a good bait to hang up on about everything on the bottom. So
You throw a lot of them?
well, it hangs up so easy. It's for me, it's if I'm in a heavily wooded area or I got a lot of buckbrush, that's a hey, don't do it. I will say when I look back at Melvern, one of the baits that I think helped me a lot is I look for baits that kind of span both, the power fishing and finesse. I'm finesse for the most part. 99% of the time I'm catching them on a spinning reel, but I've been catching a lot of bass on it. It's kind of somewhere between a jig and a Ned rig. So it's a Pee-wee jig. I think Jewel Jig makes them. I don't know if you've seen them or not.
I don't think so.
I grabbed a few. This was my ticket on Melvern, and I don't know if my camera will pick it up, but it's essentially a jig, and I still use like a some type of creature bait to back it. But in comparison, here's a 1/4 ounce Ned rig, and you'll see the profile is remarkably similar.
Yeah.
But it allows a guy like you to still throw a jig, and what you're comfortable with, but gives you a little bit of that smaller neck down, slower bait presentation that maybe you need.
Yeah. No, I like that. I'm looking at them over here. I was going to see if I could pull one up, but yeah. So is it a football head?
It is a football head,
Okay.
but it's got a little bit of a flat surface on it, so it'll still stand up if you tip it with something it's got that floats in some way, but still a small hook presentation. But we know that smallmouth don't have the biggest mouths in the world, so if you're on a lake with them, sometimes it helps to pare it down a little bit.
And did you say you were catching them on that bait at Melvern?
I was between essentially that jig and a wacky rig, which I think blows most people's mind. But I used the wacky rig. I only used a 3-inch Cinco or 4-inch Cinco, so the real small Cincos on that, and it was all placement. I could see on my side scan, I could see a boulder, so I'd throw over that boulder and just sit there because we had no wind, which is rare. So I could let that thing sink all the way down for 30 seconds before I reeled it back in.
Say that's rare, and then we had no wind at Big Hill.
Yeah, so that just means it's going to be blowing like hell at Wilson. So
well, that's more. Yeah, that's pretty likely. You said you've never been to Wilson, though?
I haven't. I've seen the lake. I have some family out in western Kansas, but it's never been a fishing destination yet. But I've heard good things about it, and I'm interested to see. I've heard it's got some clear water and a little bit of every environment from rock to grass and hydrilla and all that fun stuff.
They've got smallmouth too.
Yeah.
I want to say Justin caught one. I want to say he caught a 21-incher last year on a swim bait.
It's a big smallie.
You're not a swim bait guy, are you, by any chance?
I will. I'm a Kitech,
Okay.
small swim bait occasionally, but it's they have to be on a typically a shad pattern for
Like something like
for me to
this,
pick it
maybe?
up. No, not even close. That's the size of the fish I catch, John. So, have you
But
been? I've seen that you've been throwing swim baits quite a bit.
yeah, I mean, not as often as I probably should, but yeah, I mean, I like to throw definitely that one. I definitely have a lot of confidence in that legal dope nuisance wake. I've bought some other ones, and I just have so much confidence in that one. That's typically the one I throw, but uh, yeah, and it's not a huge one. It's maybe like 6-7 inches long. I mean, it's not ridiculously huge. But
Have you
yeah,
thrown one in the tournament?
yeah. Last year with the Air Capital Kayak Anglers, I won a tournament fishing it out at Cali. I caught all my fish on it. So it was 82 inches out there. I had two over 19 and a half on it. And then, I caught an 11 incher on it too. So they'll hit those small fish will hit the big baits too. I mean, he was still bigger than the bait by a little bit, anyways. I'll grab it here. I'll show you.
Yeah,
Let's see here. I have it rigged up on my rod, but yeah, that's it. So it's kind of a crappie. I think it's a crappie pattern, but it could be kind of mistaken for baby bass, crappie, shad. I mean, it's fairly versatile. I think in the paint scheme on it, but it's a wake bait, 2-piece. Um, it's a pretty aggressive, action. It's not a subtle glide bait, deal, but it's something if the fish see it, they they just have to lash out at it. I think they're just being protective. Those fry garters, they're really good in that situation where, that's a big enough bait or a big enough, fish that it could certainly come up and eat those fry, right? So
yep,
I think a lot of the times that's kind of what it's being mistaken for is just something that's trying to get a hold of its fry or maybe just being a nuisance and it's just telling it to get the heck out of here. It's not necessarily looking to eat it, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. It's not hungry. It's not eating it because it's hungry. It's hitting it
swiping.
because yeah, get out of here, ramming it with its
Yeah,
nose, I guess, is kind of what I envision anyways. What do we got here?
absolutely.
Rich G. He's the one that keeps urging everybody to like and subscribe. Heck yeah. Your teammate hates you apparently.
I know.
That's
He
sad.
was, I couldn't have done that without him. So,
Yeah. Something tells me he couldn't have done it without you.
yeah. Well, it's been a running joke. So him and I we've kind of just different folks in the group have joined up at different times, so we haven't been very consistent on our teams. But unfortunately, I was hoping that whoever's team I was on was always going to hopefully win the team award. But it looks like Hip is the guy that's been that recently. So I should say that I hate him.
Yeah. It's just Hip, do you want to be my teammate next event?
Everyone start reaching out to him because that's he's lucky. And I think
He should
you
start
may have heard
charging.
that. What was it? I think it was. I heard the story on Hip last week that he didn't, based on his flight getting home from vacation, he didn't hit the lake till 7, and he still helped put his team into a winning spot. So
Damn.
he was a late arrival, but didn't seem to matter for him.
Dude's coming in clutch. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so he's won two or more. Has he won more?
He's won 2 that I know of. He
Okay.
can. So it
He
looks like
says
he's already committing to you on
he's,
a teammate. So
he's got to mix it up a little bit. Oh man, that's funny. What was I gonna say? I totally blanked on that one. What about you though? What about you as far as a technique or something that you're looking to improve on that you think could really take you to the next level?
I would love to start playing around with a lot bigger baits. So to your point, a swim bait, but more particularly a glide bait,
Yeah.
a slow sink glide bait. I think in the right time, in the right scenario, I'm a very slow fisherman. So when things get tough for me, a lot of fishermen speed up. I probably do the opposite and I slow down way too
Yeah.
far and I don't move. I try to force fish to eat, I guess. But
Yeah.
that's one thing for me. If I can add to my repertoire some form of power fishing, whether it's a chatterbait, Drew Gregory style, moving, hitting things so I can get some confidence back. That's what it would be.
Okay. And I would say, yeah, it would make total sense if you for the glide bait to be your first, introduction to swim bait fishing because it's like a jerk bait. I mean,
Hmm.
it's power, but it's also kind of a finesse form of power fishing, I guess. So um, I think that would be perfect, man. And you go get yourself like a 20 $25 river to CES waiver, and you start
Hmm.
playing around with it, and you'll catch fish on it. I promise. Especially if you're milking those areas, um, you'll catch them. And you'll be surprised. You'll catch big ones, but you'll be surprised on all the little ones that'll bite it too.
It's good to hear. Yeah, I need to figure something out before I go spend 50 or $100 per glide bait.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean, you could do that for sure.
yeah, that's not something I want to learn on.
No, you wanna lose the cheap ones,
Yeah.
but heck yeah. What about your kayak setup? So run through what kayak you have, and I think also something that people are interested to hear is how your kayak's set up. So we've talked about kind of like how your tackle might be organized, and then maybe like how much tackle you're bringing with you. Are you like a minimalist, or do you bring everything you own type of thing?
Yeah. So for the last several years, I've been fishing out of a Jackson Big Rig FD, their foot drive model.
Yep.
Main additions to that, my Garmin 93 SV. One of the things that I love about that unit is, for a lot of folks that use side scan, I use a lot of traditional sonar when I fish.
Okay.
Gives me a better image of how fish are moving around underneath me and kind of tells the story of what I think they're doing. And then other than that, as far as other tech on my kayak, I do have a power pole that NECA and Select Sail graced me with for AOI. That's
Nice.
been a lot of fun this year to learn. Using that's helped quite a bit. And then in addition to that, I would say I'm a minimalist, maybe to the extreme. If you see me in a tournament, you're likely going to see 4 rods max in my kayak, and I don't have a crate. I bring a maybe for example, in the Melvern tournament, I had one 3600 deep Plano box was my only tackle that was on board with me.
Wow.
And I found that, through a lot of throwing and going, for fun fishing, I started forcing myself to get away from the big crates and the chaos. And what it does is it keeps me focused on what I'm confident in. At times, maybe hurts me because I don't have a lot of selection. But what
Sure.
I do is I take a box, and I recommend everyone does this as their throw and go box. Get one of those deep boxes and put 2 or 3 of every one of your confidence baits in there, maybe a couple, extra packs of soft plastics if that's your go-to, and roll with it. I think you'd be shocked at how little you dig into your crate or your big tackle bag if you're brutally honest with yourself. And for me, it just kind of keeps it simple.
Yeah. Yeah. How many? You said 4 rods.
4 rods, 2 spinning rods, 2 bait casters.
How do you store those on the boat? Do you store them vertically, or
I
do
uh,
you have
I
a?
try to keep all of mine laid down. I have a trough with insets for 4 rods.
Nice.
I could probably put more up there, but I found that if I have them sticking up, going under timber, backcast or lure pops loose and goes crazy, I
Yeah.
end up getting a little more frustrated. Not to say they don't end up standing up back there as a staging spot, but I do my best to keep everything laid down and simple.
Yeah. Okay. And that Garmin. So do you use that side imaging at times? Is that something that you look for brush or?
Occasionally, I have it on, so it's one of my 3 screens,
Yeah.
sometimes 4. I follow a lot more along contours. What I try to do early when I fish is hone in on what depth I think the fish want to be at, and that's what I'm following most of the time. And then I use the down view to really understand what the structure looks like. So is it wood? Is it rock? And then the traditional is basically how I look at fish. So I don't have live scope on my unit, but it's it's really what I'm looking at is the water depth and where the fish are. Are they hugging the bottom? Are they chasing shad? And that's about it. I love to, fish for other species as well. So I really got to learn my unit through crappie fishing. And that's one of my advice to a lot of bass guys is, hey, when February rolls around and those crappie are spooled up real tight and you're bored out of your mind sitting in your house, not wanting to chase lethargic bass, go chase a school of crappie and really watch them on your unit, whatever that is. And you'll learn a lot about their behavior, what you're seeing. You'll be able to see your bait. So you're typically doing a lot of dropping it straight below so you can see everything on your screen. And that'll, in a couple outings like that, you'll really understand what you're looking at.
Nice. Did you do a lot of that this year?
I did. Well, starting in about February, I'll get out and start chasing those schools of crappie. Just a good way to kind of fill the freezer, scratch the itch before. I think we all sometimes try to get started a little too early.
Yes.
And it's slow. It can burn you out. So I've filled that by crappie fishing, and I love catching the winter crappie. They're fat, healthy. They're typically stacked up super tight, and they're pretty easy once you find them.
Do you want to give us any insight to how you caught them at the Big Hill tournament this year?
Sure. Well, I didn't catch them well.
Didn't that kind of go along with your crappie?
It did, yeah.
Fishing?
So I I think there's a lot of other guys that did quite a bit better, but one of the things that I noticed is most of the fish on Big Hill also wanted to they were right on shore in the morning and then they backed off quite a bit. So I found a couple big flats off the main lake that had I could see a lot of movement around the 10-foot mark, and because they were holding tight to the bottom, I knew they were either going to be some form of a walleye or a smallmouth, and sure enough, they were smallies. And unfortunately, they weren't very big. I'm a big believer that, they travel in schools of the same size. So once I started pulling in 12, 13-inch smallmouth, I knew I had to get out of there. But had that have been the right school, it would have certainly helped me out.
Okay. And that you said that was at Big Hill.
Yes.
That was the Big Hill.
Mm-hmm.
What are you? Probably don't want to give away too much. What are you thinking about Wilson? What's in your head at Wilson? What do you?
Hey man, I'm open to any and all advice at this point. I haven't started. I think like most anglers, I do a little bit of map study, a little bit of guesswork, try to see if I know anyone that's fished it before. Most of the people that I know of are bass boat folks, so they're running and gunning points and things that aren't really feasible in a kayak tournament in a big way.
Sure.
So my hope is to just find a few areas. I fish better on drop-offs and bluffs, so I'm gonna be very upfront. I'm gonna be targeting big changes in depth. Not to say that's where the fish are going to want to be. They may be up shallow. They may be holding timber or rock or grass or something of that nature. But that's how I'm going to start breaking it down. And really, my personal goal with Wilson is I'd love to put up not a winning limit. I mean, that's always a goal, but it's a keeper limit. That's kind of my new goal this year. Is I'd love to find fish all over 15 inches, called a boat limit. And so that helps me understand if I'm finding mature fish or am I finding fish that have been caught by every other angler and have their mouth torn apart. So
no, that's definitely a good goal. And I thought that to myself at the end of Big Hill was, well, two of these fish wouldn't have made it in a boat tournament. I wouldn't have been able to bring them to the scales. So technically it turned in 5 fish, but if you think about it, like you're saying, in a boat limit, it was a 3 fish limit for me at Big Hill. So that definitely is kind of the maybe next level. Once you're starting to be more consistent with turning in limits, then you can start, making those goals to. Um, and there's always something to shoot for. I mean, guys like you that are winning AOY, winning events, stuff like that. You're always still looking to improve, obviously. So
Yeah. Well, now that I know there's some smallies in there, I'm real excited. So.
yeah, there's good ones in there too. He said, "Thank God we ain't in bass boats." I think he was struggling too. So casual bass guy, and I just want to say for the record, I'm pretty well committed to being on Team Dink Dad. So Hip, I'm sorry, but I think I've let CBG down a little bit too much this year to just walk away from him at this point. So we're all in for Wilson, me and CBG.
That's good. So you're going to make the trek as well. You're going to be
Oh
there?
yeah, yeah,
Good deal.
heck yeah, yeah. I'll be there. So um, I got all the trophies back here. Do you have your trophy handy by chance?
I have it buried in the garage,
Is
so
it?
it's well hanging up in the garage. I'm not there, but I will say that I think my kids are far more excited about there you go about the trophies that they than they are any fishing lures or anything
Isn't
else
that
I bring
awesome?
home. Those are great.
Hip is eyeballing this one right now. The
I think he'll do well there. He
team
might be the guy to
series.
beat.
Yeah, he
So
has. You're right. He's been pretty consistent. But yeah, shout out to Kevin Kerr on these. This is definitely a community thing. This is something we would not have been able to do if it weren't for guys that just want to contribute to the community. So, this is not a $30 award. I couldn't tell you what we spent on these, but it was way less than we should have. And shout out to Kevin and the kids that actually put in the work on making these things. So I think we're gonna try to do something a little bit different next year. But I think Kevin's already committed to making them again next year. So we'll have
what a guy.
we'll have some really nice um, plaques or awards or something to give away
No, they're very
next year as
cool.
well. So no, that's really cool. I'm really excited that we were able to do something like that. Um, and definitely was not in the budget. So again, oh, he is. He said, you know what? I'm working on it. He was eyeballing that. CBG says that we're due. The Dink
That's
Dads
right.
are due.
Your number's called next.
What what's your? Hopefully, we didn't already talk about this. What's your go-to lure? If you had one lure that you could fish, um, yeah, just one lure, and you had to catch fish on it, what would it be?
It's going to be a Cinco, paired on a probably an owner rigging hook. The main reason why is you can flip that thing from wacky to weightless Texas, really, really fast. So if you start getting into heavy cover, a wacky rig is not going to be your best friend. So you throw it to a weightless Texas, gives you a very similar action. It's right in there with my finesse, technique that I like, that slow fall, kind of convincing fish to eat. And that I feel like from, Minnesota to Texas, that thing's going to catch fish.
What makes the rigging hook special? I'm not familiar with that one.
It's a shorter shank. I may have one here. I can find one. Well, the goal would be to see if I can pull one out. There we go. This is a little bit of a small version of it, but you can see that it's a much smaller. The typical Texas rig is a much longer hook with a very straight. So instead of the typical almost circle hook that you'd get on a wacky rig, this works as both, but you still have the offset so that you can flip it really easily to a Texas rig, whether you're going to peg a weight on it as well, or you already have one, but you still have the option to kind of move that Cinco around in different presentation styles.
Nice. That's
So
cool.
it shortens it up and kind of gives you. I'm a big fan of lures that you can kind of use across different presentation styles. That way you're not retying. Helps me reduce my rod count, so I don't feel like I have to have a rod set up for each thing. And one of the things that I do, John, is most folks rig up their poles, just based on their confidence lures, and I think that's important. I tend to rig mine up by the water column. That's how I think through it. So I'll have a few that are for, deeper, over 8 foot of water, something that I want dropping to the bottom, moving along the bottom, moving through brush, and then something in the middle of the water column, and then something on the top. And I feel like if I can cover that once I find the fish, I can pick up the presentation pretty quickly that matches that. That's just the way I think through it.
Nice. 4 rods. I want you guys to ask yourself, could you go out and fish a tournament with just 4 rods? I think some of these guys watching are thinking there's no way. There's no way they could fill up one tiny little Plano box and call it good and leave their crate behind. But I think you guys would be surprised too, how, I don't know, maybe you're saving time. Maybe there's a lot that goes into that too. You only have so many options, so you can't really overthink it. You don't have 8 different rods ready to throw. I think it's a convenience thing to have all those rods, but it can also be a little bit overwhelming at times. So I want you guys
Absolutely.
to challenge yourself. See if you can, and you don't necessarily have to do it at a tournament. I don't want to be the reason you lost, blame it on Cole. But when you go out and fish next time, see if you can get away with that minimalistic approach. See what you think about it. You might like it.
Yeah, I encourage start with your tackle box, and have a confidence box, and when you go out for fun fishing, pre-fishing, give that a whirl.
Danny said, "Hell no." Could, but not going to.
Yep.
Okay. Where's Derek? I usually bring 4 and use 1 or 2, and that's the thing. I bring 7 or 8, and then seriously, like, I'm looking at the rods that I had rigged up at Big Hill, and I used 3 of them. So it's like they're just kind of there to get in the way and get hung up on things, and like you said, for my lure to come off of it and stick me in the back or whatever. But
Yep.
And then I'm nervous because I got all this damn tackle on my boat. I'm nervous that I'm going to drop something and
leave a drain plug out, something crazy.
Yeah. Or, lose like my swim bait box.
Yeah, that'd be no good.
Here's one. If you end up getting into the glide baits, there's one that you need. That's the Chad.
That looks good.
Yeah, so for those of you watching, if you're interested in swim baits, we've done some podcasts with some swim bait guys on here. Peyton Stumpf is one of them with Triple P Customs, and he painted this for me. He is a full-time, not only a full-time painter, but he's a full-time swim bait painter. Like, that's all the guy does, and that's how he makes his living. That's how he takes care of his wife and kids, is he paints baits. Pretty sweet deal. From the Midwest, out of Missouri. So, yeah. So if you guys are looking for swim baits, that's definitely somebody who I would definitely recommend sending a swim bait to paint.
Yeah.
And if you want to purchase some of his custom painted swim baits, you can do that through Baitworks in Springfield. They've got an online tackle store as well, and you can go there and buy these KGB swim baits that he painted. So, anyways, cool, man. What was it about Melvern that has you excited about going back next year?
I think it's that that I know that 20-inch smallies exist in that lake. That's certainly
It's
a
exciting.
booster. But I also think that it's I think it's one of those lakes that it's not necessarily the area on that lake. That's a big rocky shored lake. I think there's smallmouth on every point around that thing. It's what excites me about that lake is that you don't have to go and fill your limit, by 2:00, the first 2 hours of the tournament. I think that's a lake that if you stick it out can produce keeper fish, every few hours if you stick to it. So it's a fun lake. I'm glad you guys picked it this year to be on the trail, and I think it's going to be one that every year it's either going to be one on smallmouth or someone's going to find that largemouth school somewhere and do well on it as well.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. I'm excited. I didn't get to make it there this year. But yeah, after seeing that 20.5-inch smallie, I'm definitely a little bit more motivated to make it out there next year for sure. Did you have anything else that we might be forgetting? I guess I do have at least one more question. I've got one that I've been forgetting to ask lately, but we'll go ahead and ask it and then see if you have anything else here. But if you were the host and you had your favorite angler on the show or your biggest competition, and you had one piece of advice or one question that you could ask them, if you could get into the mind of your favorite angler, and you could ask them one question, what would it be? What would you want to learn from them?
If you could get a straight answer from us lion fishermen, it would say, what is your go-to confidence bait and why are you confident in it? What is it about that bait that makes you believe in it? And I think that not only will they tell you stories, but you'll start to understand patterns over, multiple guests, and they'll, end up pushing some good information that will push trends to, I think, your listening audience that allow them to kind of explore new options.
What was that? I think I don't know what just happened there. There you go. Are you fishing? Oh, okay. I think I know what happened. I'm pushing buttons that I shouldn't be pushing. Well, we might as well ask the question. Are you fishing any national circuits?
One of these days I will. I'd love to just go explore. I think, again, it's a great way to learn. With my 7-year-old, my 4-year-old at home, my travel radius, I've pushed the limits a little bit this year to travel a little further, but I think it's going to be a pretty tight circle. So really my goal is to learn the new waters around me and, and see if I can be helpful to anybody else that's new to the sport or has questions.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're pretty committed to growing the community as well. And
yeah,
that's kind of my approach too. I think is that, I don't really have the time to go do that stuff. So that is something I would really love to do at some point. But, with young kids, you've definitely got a lot of responsibilities here at home that you can't just be gone for, 3 or 4 or 5 days at a time. So, yeah, that's kind of why I'm all in on this stuff is because of that. And one day I might step out and get my butt kicked on the national circuit too.
That's right. That'd be my plan. It would just, I think for me though, I got to be honest, it would be national circuits, but I think I'd have to chase those smally waters up in the northeast somewhere. That even Great Lakes or something like that. Looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah. One question does come to mind with that kind of that answer kind of made me think of something else too, and brought me back to a question, something we were talking about earlier, talking about keeper limits or boat limits. Is that something you have thought about transitioning into? Are you pretty sold on the kayak platform, or what are your thoughts on?
I've done a few in the past, like local buddy bass stuff, and that style of stuff. I've got a bass boat, but for me, I don't know what it is about the kayak environment, the simplicity behind it. It'd be hard to get me away from that. I enjoy really honing in on the ecosystem that I'm fishing and knowing that I got to figure out what's around me, and not have to run and gun, like a lot of those bass tournaments are. So I'm not going to rule it out, but it's not something that I've really cared to get back into anytime soon. Plus, I appreciate appreciate all tournament formats. I think they bring people to the sport. They create recreation for the communities. But I really enjoy the format that we have in capture, photo, release, and I think it's healthy for the fisheries and something we can help continue to produce big fish in these lakes while we all get to go out and enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I like that answer. Did you say you have a bass boat?
Hmm.
Okay.
I have a
But
little family house on Pomme de Terre Lake, if you've ever heard of it, over in
yeah,
Missouri.
yeah,
It's not about, I think Moyak, that's one of their trail stops every
yeah,
year. So I may venture out for that one since I place to sleep, I guess,
yeah.
on that lake. But yeah,
Catch you
I have
some
that.
muskie out there.
I have actually lucked into two this year. Nothing very big,
Nice,
but there's been a
nice.
few that I've landed out there.
Very cool. What kind of a boat?
It's an older Nitro,
Okay,
2002, 18 footer.
nice,
As long as I have a few John boats as well for running rivers and stuff like that.
nice.
So maybe a
But
few too many watercraft, if you ask my wife.
yeah, mine would also agree. But yeah, but you prefer the kayak.
I do, and that it
Yeah.
shocks a lot of my bass boat buddies. But I can tell you that in most scenarios, I catch just as many fish out of my kayak as I do if I had thrown my bass boat in.
I tend to catch more,
Yep.
and I agree. Like I'm still fairly new to the bass boat thing, but I I like being in the bass boat. It's a totally different thing. It's a
Hmm.
totally different experience for sure.
Get to
Um,
bring your kids, bring others
yeah,
with you.
but as far as the fishing goes, I don't know what it is. I'm just more comfortable in my kayak for sure.
Yep.
So yeah, a lot of people I think would be surprised to hear that. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So then they want to go head to head, and I just say, hey, we have to do measuring boards. I don't have a live well, so
Yeah. No, I think that may be a thing. That may be a thing in the future, though, in the bass boat world too. I mean, I kind of hope so, or hope that we can, figure something else out to help keep those fisheries alive. Because you wonder, how many years can Wilson take the pounding that it takes? I mean, that lake and all of them really, they get beat up pretty bad. I mean,
hmm
they get a lot of tournaments, but Wilson in particular, and it just keeps producing. So one of these days, we're gonna ask where all the fish went.
Yep.
You know,
And a little pressure is good because it helps, keep the bass population in check and not get stunted. But it's certainly a balancing act that I'm sure is tough for KDWP to balance from lake to lake and figure
yeah,
that out.
yeah, yeah. But I think that as kayak anglers, just our format, we're kind of helping do that too.
Hmm.
So we're not adding another element that. Um, Man, I don't know. In all the years of doing this, I've never heard somebody come back at awards and tell me they lost a fish. You know,
Hmm.
so that's something none of those bass boat guys can say. I mean, I'm sure they see fish end up dead. More often than they'd like to admit. Um, but yeah, all right, man. Well, we could just keep going, I'm sure, but I do appreciate you coming on. I have a feeling this probably won't be the last time we have you on. It wasn't the first time. If you guys are interested, we have had Cole on before. We had him on last year. He was a top 5 finisher at the Mineland Wildlife Area. So you can go back and watch that. This is episode 50, so that's kind of a special number.
Big
So
deal.
yeah, happy to have you on for that. And um, appreciate the support and the kind words that you have about the whole KKA deal this year. So I don't, like I said, I don't think we're going anywhere, and hearing that positive feedback from you guys makes us want to make it even better. So appreciate that.
Yeah. Appreciate all your effort, and it was a pleasure to be on. So I'll see you at Wilson.
All right, man. We'll see you at Wilson. Have a good night.
Take care.
All right, guys. That was Cole Spriggs. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Um, Winner at the Melvern Lake event with the Kansas Kayak Anglers first inaugural season. And Cole is up there. I'm telling you guys, super modest. Um, you know, modest, right? That is a great word, a great way to explain him, because I compliment him on his ability to catch fish or how well he's been doing in these tournaments, and he automatically responds with, how well these other people are doing, and so yeah, that is a really cool, refreshing thing to see, and he is definitely a member of the community, and yeah, well, we appreciate having him on and him being on here. Just I think to help grow the community, doing things like this, taking an hour out of our time, introducing these people to you, or introducing new people to the sport. That is so. This podcast is definitely going to help introduce people to kayak fishing. And if you guys are new to the sport and you guys want to compete with us, if you want to come out and fish, or just want to be a part of the community and see what other kind of events that we might have, make sure you go on Facebook and join the Kansas Kayak Anglers group. And we've got 4 other groups as well at the more local level that you can be a part of as well. Yeah, we have a really great community here in Kansas. I was on a podcast recently, and they asked me, as being a leader in this kayak fishing community, if we've had issues with the other clubs in the area. And I was happy to say that we haven't. We haven't had the drama between the clubs. Sure, people butt heads every now and then, but it's never came to that. I think that we're all pretty like-minded, in the sense that we just want to see this community grow, and we want to introduce more people to the sport and go out there and have fun and be able to compete and have a chance at winning some money, catching some big fish, seeing some friends, winning some new baits. Shout out to all the sponsors as well. Biz Baits. We've had Savior Outdoors. You guys have won some stuff from River to Sea. They definitely showed out this year with all the prizes that they donated. Bud's Bait out of Joplin, they've donated a $25 gift card at every event. We've given away coffee from Outdoorsman Coffee Company. Shout out to those guys. Hip, I believe we've got some coffee coming for you as well. I believe David will be reaching out to you in the top 3 just out of the money. I don't know if I ever actually announced this at the award ceremony, but the top 3 out of the money, so that would be 5th, 6th, and 7th place, because we paid the top 4 at Big Hill, which is another really cool thing about combining these groups into this one big series, is that we're able to pay more places. We're able to pay out more places, and the payouts are certainly a lot bigger. And John Miller, you bring up a great point. Look, he's looking forward to the July monthly. So this is something too that I'm excited about. It's something that is going to help introduce new people to the community. If you have never fished a tournament in your life and maybe you're nervous about it, and the word tournament just kind of intimidates you a little bit, if you want to get out there and do it at your own pace, at your own time, maybe you have a weird work schedule, this is a great opportunity for you guys to have a taste of the kayak fishing tournament scene. So make sure you check out the Kansas Kayak Anglers on Tourney X. We've already got that July monthly posted. I think we've only got about 3 guys right now signed up, but I believe we'll take entries all throughout the month of July. But I promise you, it's gonna be a good one. I know it's a full on summer, but there's going to be guys out there catching them, and they're going to be catching some good ones. So nice thing too about that is we're going by length, not weight. So we'll definitely see some big ones out there. My prediction, if we're gonna do a prediction here, my prediction is that for 30 days, the month of July, it's going to take 99 inches. I'm going to say 99. I want to say it's not going to hit 100, but I think it's going to be right there. Would not be surprised if it hits 100. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if somebody just knocks it out in one day. we definitely have some potential for that. Casual Bass Guy asking if there's going to be a deadline of June 30th. I don't see why we would do a deadline. I'll talk to the other guys about it. But if somebody wants to join in halfway through the month and pay the full entry fee, I don't see why we wouldn't let them do that. So I think the more the merrier. The club will get a very small portion of the proceeds from this deal, and then we'll pay out the rest. Maybe like a small 5 or 10% or something. But yeah, shout out to all the sponsors. I know I kind of got on a tangent about thanking the sponsors, and I didn't thank them all, but Olathe Sail and Kayak has donated some really cool stuff. Russell Marine Products. We've got Grumpy Fish. You can't forget about the Grumpy Fish guys. Those lures have been definitely putting a hurting on the bass. Dan's asking how much the entry fee is. I want to say it was 30, maybe. I don't know. That was actually Ivan's baby. He was the one that kind of recommended that, and just went with it. And heck, he told me he thought we should have a monthly online, and I think we had one up and ready to register within 12 hours. I mean, it was a pretty sweet deal where I don't know if he expected us to do that or not, but I'm glad it went down that way. We are taking your guys' recommendations into consideration for sure. If you've got questions or concerns, let us know. But again, just want to thank you guys for hanging with us. First season, and we've all got stuff going on in our personal lives that have taken our attention away from the group. So I think we'll be a little bit more prepared next year. But I think it's gone well. Appreciate you guys for competing with us and tuning into this podcast tonight. If you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button. It really will help us grow the channel and grow the community here locally as well. So, guys, thank you. I'm going to go ahead, call it a night, and we'll see you on the next one.